This is how you make sauerkraut, or lacto-fermented cabbage. As a brief overview, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our cabbage, we're going to chop it up, we're going to make a saltwater brine, and we're going to fill our jar with our chopped up cabbage and our saltwater brine, and we will add a fermentation weight so that all of the cabbage stays submerged underwater. Then we're simply just going to leave our fermentation out on the counter, and we will let it ferment over 1 to 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how much of a ferment you like. Then when we're done, we're going to simply put it in the refrigerator, ready to eat. All right, so let's look at that process in a little bit more detail. Please check out these next videos. Thanks for watching. This is going to be a full technique video, as in you are going to see from A to Z my entire process and how I have been successfully making sauerkraut for the past 5-10 years. So to get started with our materials, you will need cabbage, of course, or any other type of vegetable that you would like to ferment that you know takes well with fermentation. And then you will also, of course, need salt. I live in France, and so this is just a big salt that I get at the supermarket. I do use when I was getting started, I did invest in a little 15 euro micro scale. This helps you with understanding how many grams of salt you are using, and you will need a container. I do like to use a rock as a fermentation weight, but you can also use a plastic bag filled with brine. We'll go over that later. And then obviously you need something to cut your vegetables with, and then any other seasonings or herbs, spices, other vegetables that you would like to add to your final product. So let's get started. All right, so first things first, we are going to start with our brine. Here is actually the bottle that I use for all of my fermentation brines. The writing has kind of faded away, but this is something that I use and I keep on hand permanently. So salt water, which is ocean water, has about 3.5% salinity, which means that there are 35 grams of salt in about 1 liter or 1 kilogram of a final product. And so what that means is that I'm just going to add 35 grams of salt to this bottle, and then I'm just going to fill it up with water, and that will give me a saltwater brine that's at 3.5% salt solution. So over the years, I have figured out that it is about 3 tablespoons of sea salt per liter. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you that here now. The salt that's in here is this exact same salt, and we are going to measure it out on my micro scale with my tablespoon. So there we go. We are going to zero it out. Salt, level 1, 2, 3. 37. I've got 3.7% salinity. Honestly, when you're making fermentation products, not that big of a deal. This is perfectly fine, and it's close enough to what I am working towards. When you are doing sauerkraut, you can go all the way down to about a 1.5% salinity, but that will have your product fermenting much quicker. And I do prefer to have not necessarily a saltier product, but I do want my flavors to be more round. And so I do like to use ocean water like salinity when I am making sauerkraut and other lacto ferments. And so I'm going to take these 37 grams of salt, and I am just going to add it to here. And then I'm just going to fill it up with water. All right, so now let's fill it up with water. I've got a liter of filtered water right here. And now let's lid. And then I'm just going to do one of these real quick. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lid off just so that Well, I need my salt to dissolve. And so the reason why I'm doing this first is because when I go to add in my brine, I want my salt to be dissolved. However, when you have salt in direct contact with metallic products like this, if I were to leave this lid on, it would ruin this lid. You can prevent the lid being ruined by adding like plastic wrap over the top and then screwing on, but I don't want the salt water to be in contact with this. So I'm just going to use this lid as a way to shake it up, and then I'm just going to do this and put it off to the side whenever I am ready to keep going. All right, so I do have these 2 cabbages which are ready to go that I just bought for this project, but I did actually buy a cabbage about 2 weeks ago that I was going to do for this project, but I didn't really have time to get to it. And so I did want to show you the difference between 2 fresh cabbages and one that has aged for about 2 weeks. And so what you can tell is that this fresh cabbage, I will use all 3 of these, mind you. But this fresh cabbage, as you can tell, the edges of its leaf are still well hydrated. You know, they haven't dried out. So there's still a good amount of moisture in this cabbage. Here on this cabbage, oh, you know, and that's just nature. You know, it's just slightly drying out a little bit and it looks just fine. All of these little blemishes I'm going to take off and it will work perfectly. This one, as you can tell, it has suffered a little bit more because it has been sitting for about 2 weeks. And so what I'm going to do is when I'm cutting this up, I'm just going to pay attention to remove all of these blemishes on the side, and I will pay attention to make sure that I'm only getting the good sides of this type of older cabbage. Still good to use though, so don't feel bad if you can't get to something right away. Just trim off what doesn't work. All right, so first things first, when we get started with cabbage and any type of like lacto fermented product, when I put up my chopped cabbage into my fermentation vessel, I'm going to need there to be my cut up cabbage here, and then I'm going to need a layer right here on top, which helps keep my product submerged under the salt brine that I'm going to add on top of it. And so what I can do is I can take off just a top leaf like this, and I will just remove it ever so carefully. You know, you can rip it. It's honestly not that big of a deal. Don't make it a big fuss. Here, this. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to take this, I'll fold it up on itself a little bit, and then, you know, there we go. And then after I'm done, I will put this on top of my sauerkraut, of my chopped up cabbage in here, and I'll put this down, and you will see later, and then I'll put like a rock or a fermentation weight on top of it so that all of my chopped up veggies stay submerged underneath this protective layer. And so whenever I do make a fermentation project, I do always take a few of these outside leaves because they are just the perfect they're just the perfect fermentation weight and the perfect way for me to make sure that all of my chopped up ingredients stay submerged. You know, I'll always grab more and then, you know, throw out any extra leaves that I do have. And then, and they will just go right into my compost bin, which is, you know, over there. So I'll, you know, take maybe 5 of these and then we'll go from there. All right, so now that I have some outside leaves ready to go, I'm going to keep these for also a future date and future fermentation products. But I'm gonna put these off to the side and then I'm gonna start cutting up my materials. All right, so as someone that has been doing sauerkraut and lacto fermentation for quite some time, there are a few things that I would love to touch on. You can cut using just a regular chef's knife, or you can use a mandolin. I literally just got this for Christmas, and so I have, through all of my years, I've only ever used a knife, and it has taken me a while to always, you know, get through everything that I'm doing, because I want a nice julienne type of cuts, but I will use this today for some of it to see how I like it, and then I will add in any other types of vegetables that I do like. I do have an onion here, I have some garlic here, and then I have some herbs. I have some sage right here. There is some dill that I may use, and I'm just going to take all of my cut vegetables and I'm going to put them in this huge mixing bowl, and then we're going to stir and make it look real nice. All right, so one thing that you do want to be mindful of is what type of sauerkraut are you interested in having on your fork or mixed into your salad, or how are you interested in eating this? What do you want it to look like on the fork? And so I do want mine to be kind of small, but I do want it not to disappear into what I'm doing. So I'm just going to give this, and honestly, this is fermentation, guys. This is not rocket science. This is not gastronomy. I'm just going to give this a really nice rough chop. And then as I go and mix it in my mixing bowl, all of these pieces are going to separate really nicely, and I will have a product that I'm quite happy with. All right, let's just keep going here. And I'm trying to stay as thin as possible because I know that as I cut, these are still going to be long. And as you ferment, they will get softer, and so they'll shrink and then they'll expand as they have water added to them. But I do want this to not completely disappear, but I do want it to be cut rather small. All right, let's give that a look. All right, so this is about the size that I'm getting out of my first chop. I am perfectly fine with these big chunks. They are exciting for me. I like to have different sizes, and one bite I'll get a big chunk of sauerkraut and it'll just be a pungent bite, and I will really enjoy that. So this is what I'm aiming for. So this is what I will keep doing. So for those watching who are interested in how I've cut this, what I've done is I have just cut it into quarters. It would be this way. I've cut it into quarters, and then I have sliced it down the middle, and then I've sliced it again here, and then my knife is running this way up. And so that way I'm getting nice strips like this. Oh, please remember, as you're cutting, have a bite. You should understand what your cabbage tastes like raw in this state, so that as you're going forward, you understand what kind of flavors that you do want to incorporate into your final product. All right, so let's just give you a visual of what I've been doing. So here I'm just doing a rough chop. I'm just going around the edges like this. And I'm sure someone's going to think, oh my goodness, pay attention to your fingers. I'm not going so fast that I'm putting my fingers in danger, okay? I am not a chef. I'm a dietitian. Power to the home cook that knows what they're doing. As long as you have a sharp knife, and as long as you have the correct speed at however comfortable you are chopping, there is no danger. And I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable because they don't have knife skills. I know my fingers are sticking out. I don't go so fast that I'm afraid of cutting them off. So keep that in mind as you are cutting. All right, so this is our very first cabbage completely chopped up, ready to go. Look at how much volume that makes. Once you go from something that is so compact, look at this one. This is really compact. And then once you chop it up and you kind of aerate the whole thing, it does become quite voluminous. And then as we put it into our jar, one cabbage is probably going to overfill this thing. And so if you want to have a tight, compact thing, go for a smaller chop. I want this to be a little bit bigger, so I'm probably going to be using multiples of these, especially since I'm going to be cutting up quite a few of these. And then as you see throughout this video, there are going to be multiple variations of sauerkraut that are going to be quite delightful. All right, so I do want to take a moment to talk about the books that are relevant to the art of fermentation. And so here is the fermentation, quote unquote, Bible for those who are just getting started. This is a fantastic resource for those who are interested, and it goes all the way from, sauerkraut to yogurt to kvass to you name it. If it's fermented, it's in here. This, mind you, is not, this is not a recipe book. This is a guide to understanding how fermentation works and to best practices, etc. This is a must-have for those who are wanting to understand fermentation on a more deeper level. The accompanying book that does go with this one is this book, which is by the same author, Sandor Katz. He does have, this is his recipe book that I always say these two go together. They're not sold in pairs, but, I consider them a pair. And in each book, you do have, an explanation. So, for example, and I have earmarked it, we're talking about, here's pounding or squeezing vegetables or soaking in a brine, how you pack it. And we're going to be going over this. This has a great amount of information, and it is really helpful for those who are troubleshooting with getting started and who are not really sure what they're looking at. So this one is a great book. And then here you have The Wild Art of Fermentation, and you have also, that's him, Sandor Katz, great guy. Never met him. I know him through this. I consider him to be someone that I know through the book. That is my soda recipe. There's yogurt. Anyway, in the books, so another book, let's keep going, is Nourishing Traditions. This book is also fantastic. And I did earmark this one, sauerkraut right here. And then here is On Food and Cooking. And this talks about the science and lore in the kitchen. And this is another awesome book that I really appreciate when I'm interested in the science behind what it is that I'm doing. And so, for example, here, some fermented vegetables and fruits, you can see that sauerkraut is right here. Let's bring this up closer. Sauerkraut's right here, and there is cabbage, and it goes from 1 to 2% in salt all the way up to, and cabbage is still right here, all the way up to 10%, and that is a lot. So usually we say for sauerkraut, between the 2 and 5% range, is really quite good. And then, obviously this is adapted from the Fermented Foods of the World, a dictionary and guide, Butterworth, 1987. And this is On Food and Cooking by Harold McGee. If you like this book, please buy it. I have had this book forever. Hang on. It is 2024. Let me see. I bought this in 2008. Go figure. When I was still in high school, and I still have it today. A fantastic reference. So the reason why I'm telling you all of this on the books that I talked about is because, do I salt my cabbage now? As you can see, I did not weigh this out. The salt amount that I'm doing here is not going to be dependent on the actual cabbage. I'm just going to use a saltier brine because I don't want to punch my cabbage down. I'm not interested in doing that because it's a lot of effort, and I'm lazy. I just want a nice end product. You can, if you're interested, and I do think it is a good experience, you can weigh this out, and then you can weigh out 2% of this weight in salt, and then you can mix this up. The salt, as it lays on top of the cabbage, it will pull water out, and then you will use that same water from this cabbage as your fermentation brine. So I'm not interested in doing that. I've done it before. It's way time consuming, and it's a lot of effort, and I would prefer just to use a brine. And so that's what I'm going to be doing here. And that's the reason why I'm using a little bit of a saltier brine, is because as the water is extracted from here, this will dilute this brine slightly, but I will still get a brine that is salty enough to have this final product still be at the correct salinity for proper lacto fermentation. So next, I do want this to be not just plain, but I do want there to be a little bit of character here. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to add some herbs and spices. All right, so what I'm going to do here is this is dill, this is the French word for dill. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add this in until it looks pretty good. And I'm probably even going to add in a pinch or a few of salt just to make this look nice. And so I'm also going to add in some fennel seeds. If you know me, I love fennel. It is my favorite. And so I'm going to add fennel here. You can also add it here. I have a little bit of thyme. There are some, unfortunately, my caraway jar is completely empty and I forgot to refill it. Oops. So I won't be using caraway today. But I'm going to just start mixing around until I'm satisfied with what this looks like. If you do have a mortar and pestle, that would be a fantastic way to incorporate some ground types of seasonings. This fennel seed is going to stay whole unless if I were to beat it up. And so because I want to actually taste the fennel in here, I'm going to ground up some of this fennel to break those cell walls so that as this ferments, I'm getting some of that beautiful fennel infusion. Then, of course, as we say, fresh is best, and I do have a bundle of sage here. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it in this specific recipe. I do have other recipes that are coming up that I will use it in, but if you do have fresh herbs, that is always the best resource, because that is where you're getting your most therapeutic deliciousness from your plants that you are lacto fermenting. All right, before we actually do get started, I do want to mention this book, The Flavor Thesaurus. I used this book as I was getting started so that I could learn how to better marry flavors together. And inside, you do have an entire wheel to help you understand what flavors go together the best possible way. So here is that wheel. And then here is the page on cabbage. And as you can tell, they talk about cabbage. They talk about kimchi, for example, cabbage and garlic, cabbage and onion, cabbage and pork, for example. And then you can go even farther, cabbage and potato. And this just gives you a very easy to understand way to look at what flavors marry together well. And so I do use this as a guide from time to time if I'm not sure what kind of final product I'm interested in, but what can inspire me. And so I use this book quite often. So there is that. All right. I am just going to eyeball this. I do have a handful of salt in there already. And I just want this flavor to develop. So do not be light-handed here. There is a lot to go in, and you want your product to look good. I do want this to be more dill-based than anything, so I'm going to use the most dill here. And then I'm just going to do one of these types of things. Just trying to get every leaf, every cut. Oh, and that dill is smelling fantastic already. Just trying to get, and you know what? I want more. I want more in there. I think that looks great already. And this is a nice look visually, but I just want more because I grew up on dill pickles, and there is nothing in the world that is more exciting to me than a fantastic crunchy dill pickle or ferment. And so I'm just going to make sure that dill is one of the stars in this. And doesn't that look great? That is so uniform. All right, so let's do something more. All right, so I do have some fennel in here that I'm going to ground up, but I'm going to put a few whole ones in there just for kicks. This is fermentation. Like I said, guys, this is not rocket science. Just measure, measure with your heart. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more you experiment with flavors, the more you understand what it is that you like, what it is that you don't like. Oh, I have had so many sauerkrauts that I did not like the flavor combinations of. And you know, you just do small batches until you find something that you like, and you're like, oh, that was so good, I want to make a huge batch of that. And which is what you're seeing me do right now. I just finished a huge thing of dill fennel sauerkraut that I loved, and it was super good. I had it at almost every meal, and I'm sure my little gut bacteria were super happy about that. So, you know, I'm just doing a rough breaking open of these cell walls, and now I'm just gonna distribute these out really nicely. And then I will give it a stir. And honestly, I think that's it. I did pull out the thyme, but this is looking good. And if I wanted to, I could add some actual fennel to this, and I might do that, but in another one. But I'm going to keep this one as is, so you see just a lacto fermented sauerkraut. So let's move on. What's next? All right, so now I'm gonna take this and I'm going to fill it in my jar, and I'm gonna go to about this line right here. It does say max right here, but I want my product to stay in the jar easily, underwater easily, and I want this to be easy to manipulate. I don't want to be worrying about spilling or anything, so I'm only going to fill my cabbage to about right here-ish, and then we'll go from there. So to get started, I am going to undo this whole thing, and look, you know, these do come off, and I am just going to pack this in, and do not be afraid to really push it in there, because also as you keep going, you need to help it settle down to the bottom sometimes, because if not, you are going to fit less product in, and I want as much product as possible. And I am loving how much dill I'm getting throughout this whole thing. And so I'm just gonna keep filling this up. And so as you can tell, so let's look. You can see here that I've got a lot of like free space, and I am going to lightly I'm just gonna take my fist, I'm just gonna press down just so that I'm getting as much product in there as possible. And the more you compact it, the less likely you're gonna be to have floaters after you put in your seal and your fermentation weight. So here we are going. So I think I'm getting about up to the line that I mentioned. Yeah, we're probably a little bit past that actually. All right, so that's a great line to be at. So right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that cabbage leaf that I'm going to use as my fermentation weight. It's broken, perfectly fine. Just keep this part, rip it off, throw it out. And right here, I am just going to put it on top like this, as you can tell. And like I said, guys, don't make it a big deal. All I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make sure that when I pour my water in, I don't have any of these guys floating to the top, because I want everything to stay submerged so that I do have a lacto ferment. And so that's what this looks like right now. And then afterwards, let's talk about using a rock as a fermentation weight. All right, so right now I am all set. I can add in my salt water, which has dissolved. The salt has dissolved. I've got a little bit at the bottom, but that's just fine. This is salty enough. I'm going to fill this up right here, and I want it to go past this cabbage line. I don't want there to be any food above the water line. And so in order to do that, there needs to be a weight on top of this, because if I were to pour this brine in, everything would naturally float. So there does need to be a weight on top so that it does stay submerged. And so what I have done is I have collected a nice rock from outside. I have washed it thoroughly, and I have, you're gonna laugh, I have boiled it, and I have made sure that it looks and is clean. I did use soap on it, and it is just a nice fermentation weight. If you're unsure, go and smell it. If it smells like the outside, honestly, guys, it's fine. Like, it's a rock. You don't get any better than having a rock as a fermentation weight. So what I will do is I will just drop that on top, and that will keep everything submerged. And I will fill this up all the way past my rock. And I know that you're not getting a side view, but look, my rock is completely submerged. I got some dill floating on top. That is perfectly fine. Alternatively, I do have a plastic bag. A lot of people have plastic bags. It's really easy. It's food safe. What you can do the exact same thing here is, instead of using even the cabbage leaf that we folded up and the rock, is you can just do the exact same thing. Fill up your jar with the water, and then fill up this bag with the water, and then you would just, you know, kind of shove that bag in there, and you would have the, and you can even add a rock inside here if you like, but you can have this bag be the weight on top of the cabbage to keep it completely submerged. This technique with the water bag in the brine is what I used for years before, like, just saying, oh my God, just use a rock. And if you want, there are expensive fermentation weights online that you can use. And don't be afraid, like, my hands are clean. What you can do is you can press down, you can get a little bit of those bubbles out. You can just kind of get the whole thing just started, just to compress it down. And then eventually, I'm gonna leave this out room temp. We're in the middle of February. Not much is gonna happen for a few days, I don't think. But I think that looks pretty good. And I'm getting bubbles already just because, you know, they need to come out and they need to be compressed. So there's that. Do not worry about these herbs that are floating on top. Nothing's going to happen. They're just herbs. There isn't going to be any kind of pathogenic or opportunistic bacteria that could contaminate anything. So, all right, so it has been about 2 days since we made our sauerkraut, and I just want to give a quick update. If you did watch the video all the way to the very end, you will notice I did have some leftover sauerkraut, and what I did is I made a mixed vegetable ferment as well, which is lacto ferment, which is what this is. And please check out that video if you're interested in doing, this is just fermented cabbage, but this one is fermented cabbage with some onion, some fennel, and some garlic. And so this is kind of a way to present the varieties that we can do with our fermented sauerkraut, with our fermented cabbage to make sauerkraut. So let's take a look. So this is looking pretty good. This is normal. This happens often. You're gonna have a loose one just kind of come up to the surface, and it's not a big deal. Grab a clean fork, fish it out. You can even eat it if you want. And then let's look. These herbs are not causing any problems, but if you want to remove them, just so that you can see a little bit clearer with what you're doing, give them a quick strain. I will say that if you have access to real dill that's on its stem, this won't happen as much. But because I use loose leaf dill, of course, I'm going to have some loose leaf dill rise to the top. So let's look a little bit closer. Oh man, this thing is heavy. Okay, so as you can tell, it is getting a little bit cloudy. That cloudiness is the perfect sign that lacto fermentation is happening. When the bacteria are going to metabolize, it's going to make your solution, your brine, cloudy. And that is a very good sign. I don't have any kind of white foam on top, which would be calm yeast. That is not a problem. You will see that probably in other videos. But so far, there is, everything is looking good. It's only been 2 days, so you can't really expect much out of this thing. I am going to take my clean fork and I'm going to press down on the rock just to see if there are any bubbles that come up. And so hang on, let's do that. My rock is right there, so let's try. Oh, ooh. That's pretty good for just a second day. There's really, oh, we got another floater, no problem. Let's pull it out. We didn't get a whole lot of bubbles, but we did get a quote unquote start on what we are looking for. And so we're just gonna keep having this go. And what am I actually gonna do? Hang on, I'm gonna eat these and you'll hear, there's still a crunch to them. Perfectly fine. It's got a nice dill flavor to it. And we are perfectly on track. And so once again, let's get a close up. And then I'll do another image from the side as well. So that's what this is looking like so far. All right, so here we are from the side. And what I am seeing right here, my rock is all against the edge, which means it's not centered anymore, which would explain why I've probably had some floaters come on top. I'm not gonna touch it, it's fine. If I get a lot of floaters, I would recenter it. But one thing that I do want to show you, hang on, I'm gonna move you real quick, is you can tell right here, and even with my ringlet, this thing is cloudy, which is perfect. That is a grade A sign that you are doing a successful lacto fermentation. So cloudy, all good. Even this one, which was done a little bit later, is starting to get cloudy. So in general, really happy with what's going on. Hang on, let me see if there are any bubbles. There's a little bubble right here, and if I'm not, and I can't tell if you can see from the camera angle, there's a bubble right here. You can tell, but as we go on, there are going to be more and more bubbles as this gets older. We've watched as I cut up the vegetables and I've put it into a salt brine and I have submerged it. And now we are going to wait. For this next section where we wait our 2, 3, 4 weeks for the fermentation process to take place, I am going to do a second part in this video series, just so that this first video doesn't end up being too long, and so that you do have a completely separate video, which is only relevant for when you are interested in what your fermentation looks like as time goes on. I will also address what the mixed vegetable ferment looks like in another video. Please check that out if you are interested. And thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Matthew Cress of Cress Dietetics, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.